Okay, so we are now in episode 30 on page 88. Beowulf is continuing his speech to Hrothgar about what he was doing in Denmark for so long. On your characteristics and conventions charts, you should mark down under extended formal speeches this speech. This is one of Beowulf's longest speeches, as it encompasses almost 3 episodes. So let's begin on page 88. The whole tale of how I killed him, repaid him in kind for all the evil he'd done, would take too long. Your people, my prince, were honored in the doing. He escaped, found a few minutes of life, but his hand, his whole right arm, stayed inherent. The miserable creature crept away, dropped to the bottom of his lake, half dead as he fell. When the sun had returned, the Danes' great king poured out treasure, repaid me in hammered gold for the bloody battle I fought in his name. He ordered a feast. There were songs and the telling of tales. One ancient Dane told of long dead times, and sometimes Hrothgar himself, with a harp in his lap, stroked its silvery strings and told wonderful stories. A brave king reciting unhappy truths about good and evil. And sometimes he wove his stories on the mournful thread of old age, remembering very strength in the battles it had won. So Beowulf continues to tell the story of Grendel. He also, though, tells Hygelac how well he was treated. Hrothgar treated Beowulf and the Geats very well. I was rewarded, he says, for everything that I did, and I was given the treasure that I was deserved. But Hrothgar was getting old, and he was getting a little sentimental. So oftentimes, during these celebrations, playing the harp, he would tell stories of his past accomplishments, as he misses the days when he was the one who was out seeking courageous acts or doing the things that Beowulf was doing. He would weep, the old king, wise with many winters, remembering what he'd done, once what he'd seen, what he knew. And so we sat the day away feasting. Then darkness fell again, and Grendel's mother was waiting, ready for revenge, hating the Danes for her son's death. The monstrous hag succeeded, burst boldly into Hera and killed Esher, one of the king's oldest and wisest soldiers. But when the sun shone once more, the deathly Danes could not build a pyre and burn his beloved body, lay him on flaming logs, return ashes to dust. He carried away his corpse, brought it to her den deep in the water. Beowulf then tells the story of Grendel's mother, and we know Grendel's mother is fueled by revenge. It is part of her identity as a mother to want to take revenge for her son's death. So you should write that down under your themes as well. Beowulf then tells the story of Esher and how Esher was a victim in Grendel's mother's attack, and how they were unable to properly bury Esher because there was no corpse. Hrothgar had wept for many of his men, but this time his heart melted. This was the worst. He begged me in your name, half weeping as he spoke,
Ms. Argazzi, please dial 221.
Still higher fame, and the gifts he would give me. Down in that surging lake, I saw and found her, the horrible hag, fierce and wild. We fought, clutching and grasping. The water ran red with blood, and at last, with a mighty sword that had hung on the wall, I cut off her head. I barely escaped with my life. My death was not written. And the Danes' protector, Healfdane's great son, heaped up treasures and precious jewels to reward me. A couple of things with the end of that. On line 2141 and 2142, the Danes' protector, that should go on your characteristics and conventions chart under epithet. That is an example of an epithet. Healfdane's great son is an example of catalogs or genealogies given under your characteristics and conventions as well. And then the whole fact that Beowulf was richly rewarded for what he has done, in that last line where he says he heaped up treasure, that is an example of our theme of wealth. So make sure you review the notes for episode 30. The idea that Beowulf continues to recap the battles of Grendel and Grendel's mother, that he retells of the feasts and the celebrations, and how emotionally attached he and Hrothgar were. And then also that he retells the events of Escher's death and the Danes' inability to give him a proper burial, which everyone needs to mourn someone's loss, and if they're unable to mourn that, it's like not having closure. And then the very last section of that is a very graphic, it's different than what we've been used to. What we're used to in reading this poem is really dry, cut to the chase, action lines. Whereas these last couple of lines are graphic and there's imagery and you can feel what Beowulf's feeling and see what he's seeing. And the narrator allows the reader to appreciate the aesthetic of the poem.